Jesus never wrote a book. He never led an army, and never ruled a nation. Yet billions call him God. Why? Some say Jesus is God in human form, and some say he was a prophet. Yet others say he was a moral teacher misunderstood by history. So what did Jesus actually claim? Have you ever noticed that Jesus almost never comes right out and says, "I am God"? It's a common question, and it's a really good one. You might search the Gospels looking for that exact phrase and come up short. But does that mean he never claimed to be divine? Not at all. In fact, what Jesus did say was, in many ways, even more powerful and shocking to the people of his time. Let's look back. Imagine you're standing in a crowd in first century Jerusalem. A man tells someone who is paralyzed, "Friend, your sins are forgiven." The reaction wouldn't just be surprise. It would be outrage. The religious leaders in the crowd were thinking, "Who is this who speaks blasphemies? Who can forgive sins but God alone?" They understood exactly what he was implying. Forgiving sins wasn't something a prophet or a good teacher could do. It was something only God could do. This was a direct claim to divine authority, and everyone there knew it. Then there's the way Jesus talked about God. He called God Father. Now, other Jewish people might refer to God as the Father of the nation of Israel. But Jesus used the term in a deeply personal, unique way. He'd say, "My Father and your Father," drawing a clear distinction. When he told his followers, "I and the Father are one," he wasn't just talking about being united in purpose. The people listening picked up stones to stone him for blasphemy, because they believed he, a mere man, was making himself equal to God. They got the message loud and clear. But perhaps the most jaw-dropping statement came during a heated debate. Jesus told the crowd, "Truly, truly, I say to you, before Abraham was, I am." This wasn't a grammar mistake. He was echoing the very words God used to reveal his name to Moses at the burning bush. I am who I am. In Jewish culture, this was the sacred, eternal name of God. By applying it to himself, Jesus was claiming to be the eternal, self-existing God who transcends time itself. He was saying he existed before Abraham, the patriarch of their entire nation. This wasn't a metaphor, it was a direct claim to be Yahweh. So while Jesus didn't walk around shouting, "I am God," his actions and his words were a constant living declaration of his divinity. He forgave sins, he called God his Father in an exclusive way, and he took God's own name for himself. For his original audience, these claims were unmistakable and absolutely stunning. Have you ever thought about why Jesus was actually executed? We often hear a simplified version, like he was just a really kind person who got caught up in a bad situation. But that doesn't really add up. Think about it. A wandering teacher talking about being nice to your neighbor? That's not usually the kind of person who gets the death penalty from the Roman Empire. The truth is much more explosive and reveals something crucial about who Jesus claimed to be. Let's dig into the historical context. The official charge that Pontius Pilate used to crucify him was sedition, claiming to be the king of the Jews, which was a direct challenge to Caesar's authority. But the Romans weren't the ones who started this. The whole process was kicked off by the religious leaders of the time, the Sanhedrin. And their charge against him wasn't about being a political rival. Their charge was blasphemy. Blasphemy, that's a powerful word. It means claiming to be God or claiming the rights and authority that belong to God alone. So, why did they accuse him of this? Because Jesus wasn't subtle about his identity. He repeatedly did things that, in their culture, only God could do. He forgave sins, something the scribes immediately pointed out only God could do. He claimed authority over the Sabbath, saying, "The Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath." He accepted worship from people, which was a huge red line in a strictly monotheistic faith. When the high priest finally cornered him and asked directly, "Are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed?" Jesus' answer was, "I am." That was it. That was the confession they were waiting for. For them, a mere man claiming to be the Son of God, equal with God, was the ultimate act of blasphemy, punishable by death. The Roman governor Pilate seemed to find the whole thing confusing. He didn't really see a political threat, famously asking, "What is truth?" But to appease the crowd and the influential religious leaders, he washed his hands of it and handed Jesus over. So Jesus wasn't executed just for being a good moral teacher or for performing miracles. He was executed because his claims about himself were so radical, so divine, that the authorities of his day couldn't tolerate them. He forced a decision. Was he a liar, a lunatic, or was he Lord? C.S. Lewis famously argued there's no middle ground for a man who said the things Jesus said. He didn't leave the just a good teacher option on the table. So the question for us today is the same one they faced back then. Who do you say he is? Ever wonder what the single most important event in all of human history might be? Some would say it's a scientific discovery, others a major battle. But for billions of people around the globe, it all comes down to one weekend, about 2,000 years ago. It's the event that Christianity stands or falls on. I'm talking about the resurrection of Jesus. Think about it. The Apostle Paul, one of the most influential figures in early Christianity, said it himself, if Christ has not been raised, our preaching is useless and so is your faith. The entire foundation of Christianity crumbles if the resurrection didn't happen. It becomes a story about a good teacher who met a tragic end. But if it did happen, then everything changes. It means death isn't the end, that there's hope beyond the grave, and that the claims Jesus made about himself are true. So what's the evidence? Can we actually investigate this historical claim? Interestingly, when you strip away the theological debates, most historians, even those who are not Christians, agree on a few core facts. First, Jesus of Nazareth was a real person who was executed by crucifixion under the Roman governor Pontius Pilate. This is one of the best attested facts of ancient history, mentioned not just in the Gospels but in non-Christian sources like the Roman historian Tacitus and the Jewish historian Josephus. So Jesus definitely died. Second, just a few days after his crucifixion and burial, his tomb was reported to be empty. This is a crucial point. The earliest accounts we have all testify to an empty tomb. The question isn't so much whether it was empty, but why it was empty. Did someone steal the body? Was it misplaced? Or did something truly extraordinary happen? And that leads to the third fact that historians generally agree on. The original followers of Jesus, the very people who had scattered and hidden in fear after his arrest, suddenly and sincerely believed that they had seen him alive again. This wasn't just a vague feeling. They claimed to have had real physical encounters with the risen Jesus. They ate with him. They touched him. They spoke with him. This belief transformed them from a group of terrified fugitives into bold proclaimers of a message that would turn the world upside down. They were willing to suffer persecution, imprisonment, and even execution for this belief. Think about that for a second. People might die for something they believe to be true, but it's much less likely they would die for something they know is a lie. So we have these three established facts. Jesus died. His tomb was found empty, and his disciples believed they saw him alive. The big debate, of course, is how to explain these facts. Skeptics have proposed various theories over the centuries. The disciples stole the body. They all had the same hallucination. They went to the wrong tomb. But each of these theories has its own problems. Why would the disciples steal a body and then die for a lie they invented? How could over 500 people, as the Apostle Paul claims, have the same hallucination at the same time? And if they just went to the wrong tomb, why didn't the Roman or Jewish authorities simply produce the body from the correct tomb and put an end to this new movement right then and there? Ultimately, the explanation that the disciples themselves gave, that God raised Jesus from the dead, is what we are left with. It's an extraordinary claim, and extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. But for millions, the evidence of the empty tomb, the transformed lives of the disciples, and the explosive growth of the early church is compelling. It's a question that has echoed through the centuries, and one that each of us has to answer for ourselves. What do you think happened on that first Easter morning? This is the Watchman Record. Thank you for watching. Leave any comments below and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.